about time. How does it sound? We've adjusted the sound in here to be a little bit louder. It sounds good? And we have a lot of headroom back here. So thank you for being here. As you know, we canceled last week, so we're taking a 5-week session down to 4. So doing a little bit of condensing, but I think this is going to work out just fine. Just if you're curious, that is from the way to Canterbury, England. The image there, that is from about 1400. So just a little place setting there. So the schedule here, we're going to do a little flipperoo. So today we're going to do kind of the introduction. We're going to do what shows on the 19th. We're going to do that next week, and we're going to have Mary on the 19th. So next week, we're just going to kind of talk about different models of pilgrimage throughout history, some more modern stuff, how it shows up in literature, just to kind of get the wheels spinning a little bit about what pilgrimage could mean. And then Mary has very graciously offered to talk a little bit about the pilgrimage that she did did you start in France or was that all in Spain?
It was
all in Spain, yeah. One of the more famous pilgrimages that people do to this day, and that's kind of a classic pilgrimage. And then on the last day, I'll talk more about this later. Don't worry, I'm not going to make you write anything down. I'm not going to call on you and force you to say something or whatever, but I have some things I want you to think about, and I'm hoping on the last day we can kind of have a conversation. And again, we'll talk more about that. Also, if we have extra time on that last day, I know that other people besides Mary have done pilgrimages of a sort, whether they be formal or more informal. So hopefully we'll have a little chance for you to talk about that. I'm getting a little dry. Could I ask somebody to get some water? Thank you, Scott. Good. Any questions so far? So I like to keep these classes really loose. If you have any questions at all, please ask right away. We are recording this for the internet. It's not live, but you can go up on the website after the class and view it. If you want to watch again, or if you can't be here the next couple weeks, you have that opportunity. What that means, though, is that the only way that people can hear you is if you're in a microphone. If you have just a quick thing to say, that's great. And Steve has the microphone, and he's offered to be our Phil Donahue. That's an old reference. Thank you, Scott. But if you do have something a little bit longer to say, I'd appreciate it if we wait until the mic is there, just so we can get that captured on the video. But please, anytime you have any thoughts or whatever, feel free to interrupt me. So I'm going to ask for your indulgence a little bit today. I'm going to tell a little bit of a story, actually a lot of a story. And I'm actually going to ask for a double indulgence because I'm going to go off the track a little bit, just because there's a kind of a sideline that's important to me, and I think you should know about it. It's not directly related to pilgrimage, but it's important to me. And third, I'm going to ask for a triple indulgence. Some of you have heard part of this story already, so I apologize for that. So this is Corporal James B. Radman, Company C of the 26th Infantry Regiment, 1st Infantry Division. He invaded Normandy at Omaha Beach. He captured the city of Aachen in Germany, the first major German city to fall. He held the line at Elsenborn Ridge in the Battle of the Bulge. Most American positions at the Battle of the Bulge, they had to fall back. That's one of the very few places where the Americans held the line the entire battle. And he crossed the Rhine. Then on Easter Sunday, April 1st, 1945, just a little bit more than a month from VE Day, that's Victory in Europe, he was killed in a mortar attack at Siegen, Germany. He's my great uncle. So my mother's brother, my grandmother's brother. He's buried at the American Cemetery in Margraten, Netherlands. So you may not be aware of this, but there's 13 cemeteries in Europe from World War II that are American cemeteries. There's 2 in Belgium, 1 in England, 6 in France, 2 in Italy, 1 in Luxembourg, and 1 in the Netherlands. So this is a family visit. This happened a number of years before COVID. In that picture is my sister, 2 of my cousins, and or my 2 cousins. I have 2 cousins on that side of the family, and my Aunt Ruth. She is the only living relative that remembers my Uncle Jimmy, and she's still with us today. So what I'd like to do is play this video here. I'm not going to play anything with volume, but just to give you a little bit of a insight. Let's see, now it's not showing up on the right screen, so how do I do this? There we go. So I just want you to get a little idea of this place. So that's the burial site of 8,200 Americans. And then there's also a memorial for 1,700 missing in action. So that's Margraten, Netherlands. And like I say, there are, however, what did I say, 12 more cemeteries across Europe that are similar in concept. In the Netherlands. Yeah. So next to Germany. Near Germany. So next door to Germany. Yeah, so in Europe. If you ever have a chance to go to one of these cemeteries, I'm sure some of you probably have. It's very often one of the stops if you do a tour of like Normandy. There's a big one there. But there's other ones, like I say, in Italy and other places too, and each one is rather special. All right, so let's see if I can get this back now.
How many graves were at that one?
8,200. And they're all crosses, except every once in a while you'll see a Star of David, and So excuse me here while I. Okay. So one of the things that I just want people to know, because it really is meaningful to me, is that every single grave has been adopted by a Dutch family. The royal family has adopted one of the graves. And they're kind of expected to, once or twice a year, come, make sure everything is in order, make sure there's no damage. We have had a family who takes care of ours go back here. They knew that we were coming for that visit, and they were the ones who left the American flag and the flowers just for our visit. And there's a waiting. So, and there is a waiting list. So if you are a Dutch family, they're stacked up waiting to have the opportunity to adopt. It's really something. So one thing you might notice is that it's hard to see the lettering on the stones. When it's marble and they've chiseled into the marble, it's kind of this white on white, so it's hard to see it. Well, when you visit and you're a family member, they have a visitor center, and so you go to the visitor center, and they have Americans working there as well as Dutch colleagues. And an American will greet you and will escort you to the grave of your family member. And they bring with them a pail. And we were like, why are you bringing this steel pail? And so he's escorting us to the grave. It's kind of hard to find the grave. There's so many of them, but they look it up and they take you to where it is. And as we're walking, they're kind of telling the story of the cemetery. After someone was killed in the war, they were usually buried right away for health reasons. And then when these cemeteries were established, then they gave families the option. You could have your loved one sent home, or you could have them buried with their comrades in Europe. And obviously that's what my family chose. So, they're explaining the whole history and how everything worked. And then they tell you that the pail contains sand from Normandy. And so you're encouraged to take the sand and then rub it into the letters of the tombstone. And so that makes it a lot easier to photograph. So it's not real clear on this picture, but when you see it like on a computer screen, it really stands out compared to what it would do otherwise. Yeah.
Philip and I, we've been to Normandy, and relatively the same. One of the things when you look at that cross up there, they put a chemical under it so it doesn't get any mildew. And around the bottom there, they don't use a whip. They use a scissors to cut the grass around. I want to pay for all this, the U.S.
Yeah.
It's in France, U.S. pays.
Yeah, so just to reiterate what Larry was saying, he was saying that the tombstones are coated with a special coating so that there's no mildew, and that the grass around each tombstone is cut with a scissors. And everything is paid for by the U.S. government. So, I consider myself a pacifist, but that's one of the more moving things I've ever seen. So,
Have a comment?
yeah, please.
I also have a relative in Europe, actually from World War I. My great aunt is buried in Alsace, I think.
Have you been?
No, but you can see the pictures online. It's pretty amazing.
Well, that kind of leads into something I'm going to get to about the online piece. But thank you for sharing that. I hope you can get over there someday. I don't know much about the World War I cemeteries, but I know they exist. Any other thoughts or comments right now? So after that visit, during COVID, we kind of do a monthly Zoom meeting with my family on that side. And we were talking about Uncle Jimmy. It's something we talk about a lot after that visit. And something came up, I think, a question about, well, which division was he in, and you know, just something I knew I could look up. So I started looking at Google, and I came across a page that I had never seen before. It was a page about a memorial that had my Uncle Jimmy's name on it. I had no idea this existed. And I knew that no one else in my family knew that it existed. And this memorial is in Cheb, Czech Republic. And I thought, well, that's interesting. In the Czech Republic, his name on it. And so I started looking into it more. And it turns out that his division, the 1st Division, set up a number of memorials along the route that the division went throughout the war, honoring the dead for kind of a time period from that division. And so since my great uncle was killed at the very end of the war, his memorial is where the division was when the war ended. So they worked their way through Germany. You know, it was only a little more than a month from where he was in Germany to the Czech Republic. Cheb is just over the border. And so when I found out about that, I started to make a plan for going to visit that. Where? In the Czech Republic. Mm-hmm. So a little bit east of Germany. And so one of the things I knew was that my aunt was not going to be able to join on this trip. She's at a place where that's probably not a possible thing. So I started thinking about how can I take my aunt with me. And so I started to plan. Again, this is the middle of COVID, so this was dreaming. You know, at that point, we weren't even leaving the house, much less the country, you know. But soon the clouds started to part a little bit and travel started to become possible again, so I started making plans, booking airline tickets and hotel. I didn't have much time because, you know, Maria was still at home and there was just a lot to do. And I had other things I needed to do in Europe too. If I was going to go all that way, I was going to go see my best man who lives in Poland and whose wife had gone through major surgery related to cancer and had come out the other side. I needed to visit them, and friends in Hamburg and Frankfurt, and somehow I was going to do this in a week. So I looked at this, and I decided there was no way if I was going to do all this in a week, there's no way I could drive. There was just too much driving for one person. So I looked at train schedules, mapped everything out, and figured out how to do it. And, you know, a main feature was getting to this memorial in Cheb. So, let's see here. What I wound up doing then was scheduling a Zoom call with my family. I did not tell my aunt why. A Zoom call, I had to make it in the morning so that the time difference in Germany would work. So as late as I could in Germany to make it so it would work in there. I told my sister where I was going, so she knew. But my aunt was there, my cousins were there, my sister was there on this Zoom call. But the question is, would I be there? When you're doing it from Europe on your phone, not easy. But I planned it all out. And so on the day that came, I had to get to Nuremberg and then take a small train from Nuremberg to Cheb. And so the first part was the part I was least worried about because I was going on the best trains in Europe. These things go, you know, 190 miles an hour top speed. And so I'm on the train, and it comes to a stop, and there's no station around. And a little time goes by, and then there's an announcement that there'll be a slight delay. And about 15 minutes later, there's another announcement that there is a train ahead of us on the tracks that is broken down. And of course, with a train, you can't go around. You can't go back. We were stuck there. And unfortunately, we were kind of in rural Bavarian forest, you know, so they had to get a tug train to where we were, get that train out of there before we could go. And so I start looking at the schedule and looking at when my connection is, and I had plenty of time for my connection. And then I didn't have so much time for my connection anymore. And then the realization that I would not make my connection. And so, but I knew I had made it so that worst comes to worst, I could take the next train. I'd still make it. It would be a little close, but I could make it. So we're still not moving. And I start doing that calculation, kind of like the bad math joke, you know, if a train goes 150 miles an hour from, will I make it? By the time the train finally started going, I realized that I should make it, but it was going to be close. Got to Nuremberg, get out of the train, dash across the station, get into the train. Less than a minute later, the doors closed and we're off. Okay. Okay, made that train. But now I'm thinking, well, how am I going to get from the train station to the memorial? The memorial is not right in town. It's about 4 miles outside of town. And, you know, when I had plenty of time, I had it all planned that, well, first of all, there's a bike rental place in the train station. I'd seen that on the internet. No problem. Take a bike, nice little stroll. Okay, now this is going to kind of turn into the Tour de France. You know, it was going to be tough to get there, but so fortunately that train runs on time. Everything goes great. I get out of the train, I walk into the station, and I'm kind of noticing that none of these stores are open. There's not a whole lot of people around. In fact, there's not a single employee around. And I go to where they rent the bike. No, nothing open. I think, well, okay, every train station in Europe has taxis outside, right? So I didn't have any check money. I didn't have time to exchange it, but I'm sure they'll take your house. It'll be fine. So I go outside. Nothing. No one is there. No taxi. No nothing. And the time is ticking. So I'm racking, well, how am I going to do this? Then I think, well, like with a lot of these smaller town city train stations, they're a little bit on the edge of town. You know, they didn't want to rip up tracks to go right through the middle. So I figured, well, I go into town and find a hotel. Hopefully they'll have a taxi stand at the hotel. If not, they can call me a cab. It'll work. And so I run into the middle of town. And sure enough, there's a big hotel, and there is a taxi stand, and there is a taxi. Hooray. So I get into the taxi, and now we're right on the border of Germany, so I'm expecting that they speak German. So I ask him if he speaks German, and he looks at me with a blank face. Do you speak English? He looks at me with a blank face. Now, I can't blame him. I didn't speak Czech, so it's not his fault. But I'm thinking, okay, how can I communicate this? Well, the problem is there's no address for this memorial. The only thing I could find is that it's behind this Euro Oil gas station. So I say to him, Euro Oil, and he looks at me like I am out of my mind. So I'm thinking, and I realize I have my phone. I can get the map up. And I've looked at that map hundreds of times in preparation for this. Bring the map up, get a point at it. He understands. He still thinks I'm crazy, but he understands. So off we go. We are heading to the memorial. We finally get there. There's the gas station. I motion to him on my wrist, 1 hour, come back, 1 hour, come back, I think he gets it. I'm not sure. I think he gets it. I kind of calculate based on the meter what the exchange rate was, and I gave him like 15 euros more than the meter said. He was happy. I get out, and now I realize that I'm like a minute late for my Zoom call. I look down at my phone, and now I had bought, and this is another thing that I researched, how am I going to get my phone to work on a Zoom call in Europe? And so the best thing I found was that if you buy it in Eastern Europe, it's most likely to work in the Czech Republic. And so when I was in Poland, I bought this SIM card that would stick into my phone. And I bought one with more data than I could possibly need, just so it would work for this moment. And it was 5G, so should be fast, should be great. So I looked down at my phone, and it doesn't say 5G on it, doesn't say 4G on it, doesn't say 3G on it. It has this symbol I've never seen before. So I'm thinking, oh, I must be too far out of town, it's not gonna work. But I try to connect anyway, and there is my family. Sorry. And it's like they were next door. It was incredible. It was the perfect Zoom connection. And now I haven't had a chance to walk around, so I don't even know what I'm looking for. So I walk behind the gas station, and then I can see it in the distance. I had seen a picture of it, so at least I had a sight image. And I'm walking, and my aunt is going, "Where are you?" I don't have my normal Zoom background. She doesn't even know I'm in Europe. And so I tell her I'm at the Czech Republic, and I have something I want to show you. So we walk up to the monument, and around the monument are the names of everyone who in that period of time were killed, with a little plaque in both Czech and English kind of describing what the monument was there for. So it says 8th of February, 1945 to 7th of May, 1945. That's the period for this memorial. It lists a whole bunch of the major engagements that the group had. It says, "Here ended the victorious march of the 1st United States Infantry Division. The officers and the men of the 1st United States Infantry Division who were killed in this period while fighting for the liberty of the world." So you can see all the names, and it goes around on other sides of it. And so I'm holding up the camera to the names, and we're all looking for his name. Eventually, we zoomed in on it. It's probably hard to see, but he is on the right column under corporal there. So we spent James Radman, James B. Radman. So kind of midway in the middle under corporal there. Yeah. Yeah. So the last thing I did then, when I was still on the Zoom call, was I took a picture out of my backpack. I had made a picture of him. And yeah, I just wanted to leave that for anybody who came by to know that people still care. So then, just to finish off the story, we said our goodbyes on the Zoom call. I had another 15 minutes or so to just kind of be by myself, and I really enjoyed that. And sure enough, my taxi driver came back. So I'm riding back in the cab, and I'm looking at, I'm trying to upload pictures so that my family has those pictures. And in the middle of the very first picture I'm uploading, the data ran out. So that was fine. I had no problems with that. I could just do it on Wi-Fi later, no big deal. But it could have ran out in the middle of that call. It could have ran out before that call. But it ran out just after. It is really something. So anyway, thank you for coming on that journey with me. So I want to talk about what is pilgrimage. And like I often do, let's start with the dictionary. So this is Merriam-Webster. A journey of a pilgrim, okay? One to a shrine or sacred place. I'm going to put a bookmark in the next one, the course of life on earth. That's kind of interesting. We'll get back to that. So here's another one from dictionary.com. A journey, especially a long one, made to some sacred place as an act of religious devotion. Islam, the pilgrimage, the Hajj. We'll mention that a little bit in the future too. Any long journey, especially one undertaken as a quest or for a votive purpose, as to pay homage. Anybody know what votive comes from? It's kind of connected to another word that we don't always think of when we think of like a votive candle. No? I mean, it may be related to that too, but it's not the word I'm thinking of. It's related to vow. Oops. Votive, consisting of or expressing a vow, wish, or desire. So this kind of goes into the Catholic tradition a little bit more, but the way I think a lot of Catholics are intended to think about those votive candles you see in a cathedral is that you are making a vow to pray for a loved one or something along those lines. So anyway, that's a little bit of a detour, but I just thought that was interesting. What I'd like to do is, let's see, somehow that got in there. All right. What I'd like to do is think about words that you associate with pilgrimage and maybe kind of, not necessarily build a definition, but kind of build some thoughts about this. Part of my intention here is to think of pilgrimage in a larger sense than just being on a road to, sacred places. What do you think of when you think of pilgrimage? What words? Yes, please. Purposeful. Very good. Honoring. Other thoughts? Thanksgiving. Very good. Remembering. Seeking. Excellent. Teaching. Sorry, what was the last one? Sharing. Very good. Other thoughts? Martin Luther. All right. Now we're talking. Other ones? Spiritual. Thank you. Any others? Journey. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I think it's also when we look at ourselves deeply, who we are and what's important to us and our families.
Look at ourselves deeply. What's important to our family, to ourselves. Yeah, very good. Connection. Which is great. I wish I could do a John Wayne impression. I'd illustrate the point for you, but very good. Any others? Yeah. Shrines to Mary. Yes, yes, those are many of them. Yes. Good. Other ones? I'll go through some of the ones that you haven't mentioned on my list. faith, out of the ordinary, destination, stages. Not every pilgrimage has stages, but many do. A break, a goal, refreshing, empowering, and challenging. Anyone have any other thoughts?
Mark Twain, Innocents Abroad.
Oh, very good. Mark Twain, Innocents Abroad. From the novel, yeah. Roughing It, yeah. Absolutely. No, and I think, we're starting to get warm here in the sense that a pilgrimage can take many different forms. And I think it's helpful to take some of the things that we do, maybe not in our everyday life, but that we do often, and think of them in those terms. I want to go back to the course of life on earth. It's not my intention to talk an awful lot about that, but some people kind of view life as a pilgrimage. Each day is a beginning and an end that is one step on the journey to life, and the final destination is heaven. Some people find that a really helpful way to go about their life because they're making each day an intentional part of their journey. Like I say, if people want to grab onto that, that's great. But I'm going to not talk about that too much more. But I think that's an interesting way of doing it. And I thought that was interesting that was listed in a dictionary definition, because that hadn't really been on my radar quite that way before. So what I'd like you to do for that last class is think a little bit about what type of pilgrimage, what a pilgrimage might be that you would undertake. It could be an actual journey that is a recognized pilgrimage, Canterbury or Lourdes or what Mary is going to talk about in Spain. It could be something like reading the 4 Gospels, 1 chapter a day. That could be your pilgrimage. There's lots of different ways you can look at this, and I'd just like you to brainstorm a little bit about what a pilgrimage is that you could do. Not everybody here is at a place where they're able to travel, but that's okay. There are different ways you can do pilgrimages without leaving your seat. And then, like I say, on that last day too, we'll probably have a little bit of time if people want to talk more about a pilgrimage they've done, whether it was a formal pilgrimage or whether something that fits this description, especially with a little bit of hindsight, that, that was really a pilgrimage for me. And, so now kind of going back to the story I was telling, that was my pilgrimage. You could kind of say the visiting the cemetery, which happened much earlier, was as well, but it certainly didn't feel like it at the time as much. I think I needed that first visit to become as connected as I have to somebody that I never met. I was with my aunt, and she was telling stories about what he was like and her memories of him, even though she was pretty young. We have a visitor. But when it came time to visit that memorial, that was a pilgrimage for me. That was a spiritual journey. And when we talk about spiritual, it's really easy to kind of think, well, you didn't even talk about praying. I mean, I did pray, but it was on the train, hoping that the thing would start moving again. But it wasn't strictly a religious journey, but it was very spiritual. And one of the things we talk about at St. Andrew a lot is self-care and how important that is. And this was self-care for me. I needed that journey, that moment, that sharing with my aunt to kind of cleanse my soul a little bit. And if you don't practice self-care, then you're not in a position to be able to do things around the church joyfully. So it is honoring God to take care of yourself and to do things for your soul like that. So I have a couple minutes left. Are there any thoughts or questions at this point? I think I've left you speechless, so that's... Well, again, thank you for letting me kind of indulge with that story. I hope that's triggered something for you about your journeys, your pilgrimages. We have a couple. Maybe I'll ask Steve to.
Yes, we have our personal pilgrimages, but it can be a pilgrimage to follow someone else's pilgrimage. Because as we relate to them and hear what you just did, that was, in a way, it triggers things in our own lives and what we seek. So it's the pilgrimage we take, but it's also the pilgrimage we support for others as well.
Thank you.
So this is just aha thing. Some of you may do the Richard Rohr daily meditation that's online each morning, and I actually sent this to Paul this morning. And this week he's doing meditations on pilgrimage for the next 7 days. So it says this week we explore the contemplative tradition of pilgrimage. So perfect timing.
Absolutely, and thank you for sending me that. And as a matter of fact, I think I'd like to read a little piece of today's. Mary Smith sent me this morning, and I was like, oh, it's another little miracle. So this is an excerpt from today. So his name is Richard Rohr, R-O-H-R, and he does a daily meditation. Yes. He's from the Center for Action and Contemplation. So he wrote in part, to help us understand pilgrimage in its ideal sense, it has to do with the sanctification of both time and place. Let me give you a mantra that the New Jerusalem community, this was something he was involved in the past, that the New Jerusalem community have come to know. The mantra is, this moment or this place is as perfect as it can be. Our temptation is to always look to the next moment to be more perfect, the next place, and then the next moment or place. You see, we are always disappointed in what we actually have. We are always rushing into the future. The reason we've been rushing into the future is because we're not experiencing a wholeness in the present. And when we haven't grasped the present, we always live under an illusion. It is an illusion that the next moment or place is going to be better. When I get around this corner, when I see this church, when I get to Jerusalem, when I get to the hotel, whatever it might be. But pilgrimage helps us see this attitude is essentially wrong. As long as we think happiness is around the corner, it means that we have not grasped happiness yet. Because happiness is given in this moment, and this place, and this moment and place are as perfect as they can be. So I thought that was very nice. So again, thank you, Mary, for pointing that out. And it'll be interesting to follow along with that and see where else he goes, at least figuratively. So All right. Any other last questions, thoughts? Okay. Well, I hope to see you next week. Thank you so much.